to swear, in other words.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Delaware Astronomical Society to order. I'd like to welcome everybody. This is our first meeting back in person and remote. This is a hybrid meeting. It is September of 2021. That's very exciting. First meeting. So I'd like to welcome everybody that's remote as well as everybody that is in person. So do we have any new members like to introduce themselves? I think you can introduce yourself and you turn this around so they can see you.
Put him on camera.
Well, what do you want me to say?
Your
name would be helpful while you showed up.
You're just supposed to know that already. Hey folks, I'm Matthew. I just joined last week. This is my third meeting. I've been to 2 workshops as well as this. I just moved to Delaware from Ohio about 2 months ago. And I'm very happy to be here. Great story.
Perfect.
Welcome.
You knew exactly what to say. That sounds great. And welcome to our club. Anybody else?
We're in Ohio.
Cincinnati.
Okay.
Not Delaware, Ohio?
No.
Delaware.
I told you we got a Philadelphia in Ohio and Delaware.
Oh my gosh.
So it's very, very confusing.
You didn't even have to move.
I tried to tell people where.
Yeah, I bet.
I think there's another new member walking in right now.
Oh, really?
Make him introduce himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's not new. He's been in the AP sig for a long time.
Yeah.
All right. Any other new members? I don't think so. I think we're good. All right. So next item on the agenda, Amazon Smile. We wanted to make an announcement about that.
Yeah, I can
Ted?
say some words.
No? Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so Amazon has this program called Amazon Smile, and it allows you to connect your Amazon account to any, well, not any nonprofit that's affiliated. No, a nonprofit that's affiliated with the Amazon Smile program. The way it works is some small percentage of any purchase you make through Amazon goes to that nonprofit. It does not increase the price of your items. The Delaware Astronomical Society is part of that program, and we've been a part for maybe a couple of years now. And I mean, we get a small amount of money, but it's nothing on the part of the user to do it. We had some instructions in the focus. We've had them on and off over the past maybe 2 years. Might not be a bad idea to refresh it or even to maybe put something permanent on the website. But if anyone's curious, I mean, especially as you know, a lot of us have probably had 3 or 4 visits a day from the Amazon delivery man, especially during the quarantine. You can make a small percentage of those purchases go towards the DAS, you know, or another charity of your choosing. But you know, DAS would be a good choice. If anyone's curious, maybe what we'll do is we'll send a message over the groups.io with some instructions, and maybe, you know, just maybe we'll just kind of continue to put some reminders in the focus in the groups.io and maybe the website. But it's one of those things, you set it up once and then it's kind of effortless after that. If anyone's curious to see how much money we've collected from it, again, I don't know that, but that we could get that information if that's useful to know. But it's something, and it's really no effort other than once for about 3 minutes, you set it up and then you're good from then on. So.
Hey,
And it's
Jeff?
0.1%.
Hold on.
Got it.
Rick has something to say real quick.
yeah, Jeff, I think this was actually advertised in the focus for years, and I was still afraid of it. I think we talked once about doing a little demo of how to set that up for those of us with fear in our hearts.
Got it. We've done that in the past. It would not hurt for us to do it again. In fact, not to put anybody on the spot, but today is member mini talks. Maybe we'll see how it goes after our pre-scheduled talks. Maybe we could do a little Amazon Smile demo at the end. No promises though, but we'll see how it goes.
Yep. All right. Next item on the agenda is the calendars. Lynn, you want to do that?
Okay, I just want to let people know that I have the calendars here. There are those that have ordered them. I've got your name on the list, $7. Take one home.
Cool. Thank you very much. 1 second. All Our next item on the agenda, Diana has been supplying us with refreshments for several years now, and she's done a fantastic job of that. So we want to thank her for her service. She's still doing it. So thank you very much, Diana. Can't be here at the moment, but she's already gotten us the snacks.
Because she's running around delivering the snacks to all
Oh,
of the.
that must be it. Very good.
He's at 0.1%.
All right. Next item is that Rick has decided to retire from being the Focus editor at this point, and Mark Giannini has stepped
So
up
hold
to
on,
the
one step
plate.
at a time. Thank you, Rick.
Oh, thank you, Rick. Yay.
Happy.
And Mark Giacobini has stepped up to the plate. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mark.
It was a lot of fun, but it was definitely a lot. And I think Mark's going to do an awesome job, and you already put out a great first issue. So I think it's in really good hands.
Absolutely.
It's so hard act to follow.
Yeah. All right. Any other announcements that I have missed?
Something came in about the book club over the chat, Rob.
Okay. Just 1 second. Let me get the mouse this way.
And actually, maybe, I don't know if Mary wants to. It's up a little bit. There it is.
So book club meeting on September 30th at 7 p.m. Oh, and that's the 3 body problem.
Oh, yeah.
And I did want to say really quickly that I did read this book about a year ago.
I
It
heard
was
it's
a
excellent.
fantastic book. It was definitely very cool.
It's pretty thick, isn't it?
Not that thing.
No, okay.
But it's a really good story. Like when you first hear about it, you think, oh, this must just be a factual book. But it's a very good like sci-fi novel.
Yeah, it's not a,
It's an adventure.
it's a fiction book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it sounds like a textbook.
it's science fiction, but it could very well be true. You never know. But it is a very, very cool book. It's based in today. It's not based in any, futuristic world.
Yeah, that author-
It is a good book. I read it.
Absolutely. So I would definitely encourage you guys to check that out. I have it sitting at home if somebody wants to borrow it. All right. And any other announcements that we have missed? Okay, I do know the AP SIG we already had. That was like,
Would you say the name of the book again?
it's the 3 body problem.
Could you say,
Is that
say again?
the 3 body problem?
What's the name of the book? What?
It's the 3 body problem.
Put it in the chat. Yeah, put it in the chat.
Gotcha.
I have to share
Okay.
the window though, because you can't
Yeah.
see what's on the chat unless I share it. You can look in the chat. I think it was in the chat publicly. All right, any other items? All right, I'm gonna close this then. And I think we're ready to proceed, whoever's first.
Actually, while we're on the topic, and I don't mean to put anybody from the book club on the spot, but I know the book club has its own email distribution list. But I mean, I simply would maybe suggest that maybe some members who aren't deeply involved in the book club would want to participate maybe in one meeting based on a particular book. I guess what I'm hinting at is, maybe it would be worth for the book club to make an announcement via the groups.io with whatever the upcoming book is going to be. I know, just a suggestion, if they don't want to, that's cool, but might not be a bad idea, especially if we're getting new members all the time.
Spread the word.
Yep.
Yep, very good.
It is on the calendar.
Yep, it's there too, absolutely. All right, any other items before we start? All right, we can begin. Who's up first?
I will start.
All right, I'm gonna move this to the other screen so it's out of your way.
Actually, I'm not gonna have any content
Oh,
for
so
me
we can
yet,
just leave it?
so yeah.
We'll just leave it. All right, I'll move. Get these computers out of the way real quick. I'll be right back.
Right. So I just wanted to start off again, this month, we are doing our what are we doing? We're doing member mini talks. The topic this month is going to be what I did this summer. It's our typical September meeting topic that we've done this for. Who is that? Yeah, okay, so yeah, let me take a couple steps backwards. Thank you. I'm already out of practice. Just like the protocol. Yeah, sorry, hold on. I don't know if, do I know how to do that? Rob. You see something, Bill? It is. Where's Rob? Well, I'll do this one for now. How do we mute everybody?
Got it. So it's under the participants right here.
Yeah, I thought I was looking there.
And what you want to do
Oh.
is mute all.
God, I had to go into it. Yep. Okay.
Okay, and then you're good.
All right.
Oh, is that window? Is that window?
Oh, probably
He
unmute.
should be, he should be unmuted.
I am. I'm not. Can someone give me a thumbs up if they can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So, man, I'm already out of practice, man. We take 2 months off and I forget how to do everything. So, per our usual virtual Zoom protocol, we are going to mute the participants just because it preserves the audio quality for both the people in present as well as the people virtually. That being said, for this meeting especially, I'm going to handle things more casually than when we bring in a formal speaker. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and interject at any point, by all means. I'm probably not going to be as good at monitoring the chat window as I have in the past because I'm not going to be sitting in front of a computer. So by all means, anybody feel free to unmute themselves if they want to interject and ask any questions or comments. Maybe just a reminder of please remute yourself after you've said your 2 cents. Yes, and yeah. So anyhow, so just wanted to make so this month is member mini talks with the theme of what I did over the summer. I'm actually going to just kick things off with some general comments, not really about, well, I guess it's what we did this summer, but just this is our first monthly experiment in doing a hybrid meeting. About a year and a half ago, the world got a little crazy and we kind of regrouped and tried to figure out how to make the most of it and developed our meetings in pure virtual mode. And I think we can all say that thank goodness for Zoom because it probably preserved our sanity as much as it preserved our sanity over this year and a half. And the DAS adapted like a lot of other organizations in trying to figure out how to maintain some semblance of its existence in a pure virtual mode. And we held, gosh, I don't know how many it was, 8 or 10 fairly successful Zoom-based virtual meetings. And we kind of got that down pretty good and it worked really well. As the programming chair, actually it provided one opportunity, which was my pool of potential speakers was now greatly increased because driving distance was no longer a factor. So we had some interesting speakers from a little bit further away. So that brings us into the summer where vaccines started to roll out and things started to open up again. By no means do I want to suggest that we're back to normal. The fact that we have some friends on with us virtually is an indication of that. Some of these variants we're still trying to understand, et cetera, et cetera. So kids are still, not vaccinated and, we are by no means out of this, but we're certainly in a better spot than we were a year ago. Attribute to the fact that, some of us felt comfortable coming out to be in person, which is good. So that takes us now into this next mode where we are now and have been over the past roughly 1 month experimenting with doing things in a hybrid mode. Hybrid meaning having some people here in person, having some people tying in via Zoom, and then the real delicate dance is attempting to tie those two together. So we'll see how it goes. Just like when we went to pure virtual Zoom a bit over a year and a half ago, we might have some bumps and hiccups, but appreciate everyone's patience through this. We have been holding astronomy workshops in a hybrid mode for about the past month, Rob, wouldn't you say? And those have been going, from a technology standpoint, going fine. We'll see how it goes with the formal meetings. We did our board meeting in a hybrid mode, that worked fine. So we'll see how it goes. I certainly am open to any feedback for how we could do it better to improve the experience for either people here in person or people that are remote. For example, one thing right now, we've got a webcam which is pointed at me and will be pointed at the various speakers, but nothing pointed at the audience unless we move it around. So again, I'm open to feedback. Feel free to give me a call or email me if you've got some ideas of how we can make this better. Also, by all means, because this hybrid mode is a little bit unique, if anybody is noticing that we're not doing something right, if the wrong screen is being shared, or if the screen's not being shared at all, or if the webcam fell off and is pointed at the ceiling, by all means, unmute yourself. Let us know sooner rather than later. We're all figuring this out as we go along. If something really goes crazy, give me a call on my cell phone, and we'll figure this out together. But this is a interesting and exciting new chapter in how we manage programs, and we'll see how it goes. So,
Jeff,
yeah.
also say if the Zoom gets cut off, that they should try and get back on to the start back up.
Got it. So if the Zoom, I'm not sure if people, could anyone hear Rob? Maybe give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, cool. Yeah, basically just to repeat, if my computer cuts out, hang in there, rejoin. I will get the Zoom session started back up again. And again, we'll hope for the best. For some time being, who knows how long, we will continue to do both the weekly astronomy workshops as well as the general meeting in a hybrid mode. And just a quick reminder, every Tuesday that's not a main meeting, we do our astronomy workshop where, again, the norm of recent has been some number of people gather here at Mount Cuba. Others join via Zoom, and we tie those two together. The astronomy workshop for newer people is a informal gathering. People come, they hang out, they chat, they do small projects, maybe fixing a telescope or talking about different astrophotography techniques to just, or the other objective of astronomy workshop is sometimes people have telescopes that they don't know how to use. So we invite them to bring them out, and we'll help have them show them how to use the telescope. That's obviously a bit tricky over Zoom. But for people that need help to use the telescope and are comfortable coming out, they're welcome to come out on any Tuesday. We're having our astronomy workshop, and we'll set them straight. Another reminder along those lines is the DAS maintains a collection of loaner telescopes that members can borrow. We usually say we let people borrow it for a month, maybe 2 months. After it gets much beyond that, you'll start getting some friendly requests to return the equipment. But we do have a couple of telescopes. I'm not going to get into the details now. It's available elsewhere. But the Tuesday night workshop, even more than the general meetings, is a great chance to come and have one of the officers show you the different loaner scopes that we have available, and then to give you a quick demo for how to use it, and then allow you to check it out. But basically, we have a collection of what we would call proper beginner telescopes that we would advise a beginner to start with. And we're happy to show you how to use it and let you borrow it for, again, a month or two. So please use the astronomy workshop for that. If you don't make it to the astronomy workshops and would like to borrow a scope at a main meeting, that's okay too. But, obviously the time is a little bit more limited there. So I think that's it. Again, please, I'm open for feedback. The hybrid mode, this is sort of a new experiment now, and we'll see how it goes. All right. With that, as promised, we have a series of members who are going to give some different mini topics. And if I can figure this out at all, let me see.
Take the Zoom screen to the other screen,
Yep. Okay.
and you'll have to share the other screen once you get the presentation.
Oh, is it?
Double click.
There we go.
The presentation and just share the other screen.
Oh, did my folder close? Okay. Where is it? Oh, we got to do something about this. This is okay. Here we go. So Lynn, and so we're going to start off with Lin King. Lynn's going to have a few words about a DAS member that we've lost recently. Lynn, is there any particular order to these photos?
I have to see him.
Okay, well, I'll just let you take the helm.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Rob, maybe what would be the best way? You're saying, because Lynn's the only one that doesn't have PowerPoint, so that's going to be the one that's going to be a little.
Here, we'll share the other screen.
We'll get you set up.
On the screen.
Okay.
No problem. We share the other screen first. Screen 2, share. So hopefully they can see that. And I'm going to bring these up over here. And I'll open whichever ones you want.
Open the eclipse.
Is this one?
Yep.
Actually, maybe would it work best if Rob navigates and that frees you up just to talk, Lynn? How would
Yeah,
you?
that would work.
Okay,
Well, or I can click on the, if the pictures are up.
okay.
Actually, we should try and point that at her. if we can.
Yeah, well, I think she's going to take the helm, so that'll all.
If the pictures are up, I can click.
Here.
I can click on
Well,
it.
they're over there. You have to look over your shoulder.
Yeah, you'll have to just.
If you want,
that's
I
the-
can click.
Okay, you can click
Well,
the
This
pictures.
is part of us
I
working out the
I
bottom.
pretty much got them. Okay, what we have,
Are they seeing the picture, do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I shared that
Okay.
screen. See your screen here.
okay, this is 5:45 on June 12th. This is the solar eclipse. Tom DeMott and Ralph Delinger were out in Oxford taking pictures. A few hours later, Ralph had, I think it was a massive stroke. Tom was with him, took him to the hospital. The ambulance came, helped him get in the ambulance, and he didn't make it. So this was the very last picture that Ralph took. Those of you, I met Ralph early 80s, 1980s. He was already here when my son Wayne and I joined the club. He and Tom DeMott were basically attached to the hip. They did everything together. They would have star parties out at Nottingham Park. They were members of the DAS before I became a member. Later on, and you'll see by some of the pictures, Ralph joined the 1st Delaware Regiment, which is a Revolutionary War regiment. And I eventually joined that. Ralph was actually knew and grew up with the gentleman that is my significant other. Didn't know it, but it was kind of a really neat thing. We got them back together. Ralph was a teacher. He was always into something. And so he was, as I said, that was on the Celebration of Life memorial service that they had. Jim Chang was at the service. I think he was the only one from the DAS that managed to get out there. I was out there and Jim was there. Let's show on 9/11, we always, at Taj Ford, we always celebrate. You can click that. We always celebrate and that's Tom DeMott at the podium. We always celebrate 9/11, 1777. And since the 9/11 of the Twin Towers happened, we do a double celebration. For the 9/11, 1777, General Washington reads a letter after he has retreated from Chadds Ford to Chester. And this is the first Delaware are the men that are lined up on the back. Tom is giving a talk on him. You can go to the next one. There's a couple pictures of that. There, yeah, that's Tom. And that's Tom reading some things. The band behind him is Chris Malarchik, who's the president of the 1st Delaware. Okay, go to the next one.
This one?
Yep, and there's more pictures of what they did at the service for him is they were allowed to do what's called mourn arms. And what the gentlemen do is they will take their guns and they take the gun and they will slowly bend the gun down where the barrel of the gun is on the ground and their hands are over the stock. and they bow their heads in prayer. And then after that, they were allowed to do a salute, which they were able to shoot off their guns and salute him for that. So here's another one. Yeah. Oh, and this one. This was at the opening of the Museum of the American Revolution. And I'm actually, and I think that Senator Carper, he was there as a former governor, chose not to take the carriage, but walked with the first Delaware from where we did something at Rittenhouse Square, walked to the museum. And the caption that we had under the first Delaware's Facebook was, Ralph was so proud to carry that flag. And he was kind of, he was instrumental in researching the flag that you now see at the Brandywine battlefield, which was the first, they think it was the first flag flown, I'm not sure, at a battle. For those that don't know, the Battle of Brandywine started at sunup, ended at sundown. The longest battle of the American Revolution, over 40,000 men were involved, including both sides. And it covered over 15 square miles, and they're still finding more. It was the largest battle with the most men in it. He did the research, and Tom's wife, Stevie, actually went out and got the silk and has made two original, basically, flags. You can get the flags at the battlefield for that, but that was on that date, and there he is with the first Delaware. And Tom's kind of behind the girl in the end. Okay, let's see, where are we? Yeah, where are we?
We got this.
And that's the last one. One of our members sketched him. And so he was a big part of the DAS, and I knew him well long. And the members of the first Delaware were really surprised. I said, I've known him since the 1980s. So he's been around, like I said, he did a lot of star parties at Nottingham Park. And of course, they live in Oxford, but nice guys out in Oxford. So that was our member. I don't know if anybody here that's been here. Do you remember Ralph?
I absolutely remember Ralph.
Okay.
Of course, Tom, I haven't seen him in forever either.
Yeah, well, I saw him Saturday. I saw Tom Saturday. We were at Chad's Ford doing our little reenactment, and then that was the same day that we did the everything. Every now and then 9/11 happens when we do Chad's Ford. Next year, I'm putting in a plug on the I think it's the 22nd and 23rd. It's that third Saturday. There will be a big Battle of the Brandywine at Sandy Hollow. And the reason we had to move it is because the regiments from Britain are coming. Oh, yeah. That's something that happens. They come from literally from the Mississippi to the Atlantic Ocean for that and that. So,
Thank you very much, Lynn.
Okay.
That was very
Another thing
meaningful.
about Ralph, he had all kinds of different interests, and
Oh, yeah.
one of those was collecting old historical coins.
right, he
He did
did.
a program for DAS and
Yeah,
brought in a lot of coins that had astronomical connections
right.
and told all kinds of interesting stories about the coins and the astronomy that was imprinted on them.
Yeah, he gave several talks on the ancient coins.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn.
Very good. Just a second. That's over there. So just take a second to
Now
start
the
up.
PowerPoint will get more.
Yeah, I wanted to start that up a second time for that. See what this thing can do. One second, I'll put this over here. I figured it would do that.
Yeah, it kind of has the monitors reversed from where you probably want them, but
Yeah, that'll be
it's
interesting.
okay.
We'll have to see what happens.
It'll
I'm gonna
work.
share the other screen and then start it up. We'll see if that works. And they're
Swap.
backwards. Where's the swap
Oh,
button?
it's behind the Zoom bar. Love it. Oh, there you go.
Where is it?
Display settings. Swap.
Right, that'll work then. Great, and I'll get this out of the way. I don't think it matters, but put it over here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so what I'm going to be doing is presenting a trip that I took this summer because it's what we did this summer. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Unfortunately, I couldn't do a whole lot of astronomy this summer due to the weather. It really did not cooperate whatsoever. But we did go on a very nice trip to the Northeast, which I think a number of people might be interested in because there's like-minded people in our club. So I'm going to try and advance that and we'll see if it works. Yes. All right.
Clouds, that's astronomy, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. All right. So we decided to go to the Northeast for a number of reasons. One, we really do love to travel. I was to the Galapagos once with my wife. She's now been there twice. We've been to Hawaii and a number of other places around the country, on the West Coast and in the middle of the country, and all kinds of different places. We really do like to see all kinds of animals and go on hikes and kayaking trips and biking trips. It's really our thing. So that's a good reason we did it. We were cooped up during the coronavirus for a whole year. We didn't like do anything except for one brief trip to southern Delaware in a little trailer. We went to Chincoteague and southern Delaware, a couple of state parks. It was very nice, but that was it that whole year. So we really needed to get out of the house. And another thing, we really have enjoyed some of the places out west where you could hike in alpine tundra. You get above the tree line and it's just so beautiful and peaceful. And you can see for miles and miles. So we really do enjoy that climate. It can be a little cold sometimes, but if it's nice and warm in the summertime, it can be very, very pleasant. We also wanted to get out and do some kayaking, some hiking, some biking in some different areas. And we hadn't really been to the Northeast very much. We had been to the Northeast in Maine once to go to Booth Bay Harbor. And that was like it. You know, we've been to many other places in the country multiple times, but we hadn't really been to the Northeast that much. So we figured that would be really cool. Like I'd never been to the Adirondacks. We'd never been to the White Mountains. I think she had been there once, but I hadn't at all. And we'd only been to Maine once and we'd never been to Cape Cod. So we figured it would be very nice to get out there and do some cool stuff. All right, so before we went, you know, in the springtime, I was getting kind of antsy wanting to get out. And I spent a lot of time looking at Google Maps thinking of where do I want to go this summer to get out so we could go somewhere. And I got into this whole alpine tundra thing, looking for where I could find alpine tundra nearby where we didn't have to fly. And I found there were some decent areas in the Northeast. If you don't know, that alpine tundra area is the area above which the trees just can't grow. They can't survive because in the wintertime it gets so cold. So you need to have an area that has a high altitude or a high latitude. So like in this area of the country, you know, I grew up in Western Maryland. We have some pretty big mountains, but the problem is that the tree line in this area would be above 6,000 feet. And that we just don't have any mountains that tall. Even down in like Tennessee and North Carolina, it's just not tall enough for that latitude to get a tree line. So in the Northeast, there's a few pretty tall mountains, and they do happen to be tall enough because the tree line up there is low enough that you actually get some alpine tundra. And we found a few places. One that looks really beautiful on this list is Mount Katahdin. That's in Maine, in Baxter State Park. And we spent a bunch of time there. That was really cool.
I got a story.
Also over here, Mount Washington is one of the more interesting mountains. It's actually a place where they've recorded the highest wind speed on Earth. So that's a pretty interesting one. Mount Lafayette is another interesting one. And there are a few others, but those are the ones that we ended up visiting. And so we went to all those places and hiked on them all. It's very cool. So what are you talking about that here?
Can I just interject something, please?
Sure, I suppose.
Mount Katahdin. How many people remember Al Weber? All right. When he was married, first married, he and his wife on their honeymoon climbed Mount Katahdin and
My kind of
Camp.
weird.
primitive camp, honeymoon.
Very cool.
She must have really loved him, I'm telling you that. So for those that remember Al Weber, that sounds like
That's
something
Al.
he would
That's
do.
Al
Right.
all over. I love it.
Oh,
Oh, that's wild.
so she knew she was a keeper.
Very
Oh,
good.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
That's the northern end of the Appalachian Trail.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I'll be talking about all that in a couple minutes. All right, so here's the plans that we ended up making for our trip. Starting, of course, here in Delaware. And then we travel up here to Lake George first. It's a place that we've heard a few things about in the past. We had some relatives that wanted to go there. And so we had already got thinking about that place. It's also right on the edge of the Adirondacks, which is a place that I've wanted to go for a while. And so that we thought that would be pretty pleasant. And then after that, traveling to Lincoln and the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And after that, we went up here to Acadia National Park and spent a few days there. And then we went up to Mount Katahdin to climb that. And then we came down to Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard and then came back. So that was our plans, about a 2-week trip.
Just weird the perspective. I figure, I picture Boston as being pretty far. And then
Yeah.
Yeah.
you were like that far plus more.
Indeed,
Maine
that's true.
Hours to get to Boston, I can't.
How many miles did you put on the car?
Probably a bunch.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you can see here, probably about 1,600.
Oh, yeah, it says it, yeah.
Yeah, probably about 1,600, but maybe a little more. Yeah. So one problem that we didn't anticipate was stellafane was actually going on during our trip, didn't realize it, and we actually went around it. So we had- yeah,
You could have visited me.
could have visited, but unfortunately, we would have been here in Cape Cod during stellafane, and that just is too long of a drive. That wouldn't have worked. If it was here, maybe that could have worked, but that was later in our trip, so it didn't work out. Would have been cool though. I've always wanted to go to that.
Somebody just asked what cellophane is.
Oh,
I figured it out in context. I was thinking cellophane too quickly and I'm like, wait.
gotcha. Okay, well, if you don't know, Dave, you want to mention what stellafane is? Because you were just saying.
Well, cellophane is the birthplace of amateur telescope making in the United States. It was started in 1923. Every year they have a convention up there, usually either late July or early August around the new moon. And it attracts anywhere between 800 to 1,500 people. They have a number of speakers, swap meets, telescope competition. It's sort of like the Woodstock of telescope making and astronomy. So it's,
How do telescopes compete?
You put them in a cage and.
I'm just kind of curious. I mean, I don't know,
you never judging the telescopes.
but like
Yeah,
for which
quality.
one's clear and that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, they look at the quality, there's a number of different categories. There's on either on Friday or Saturday night, if it's clear, there's an optical competition where they're judged. And then on Saturday, they have the mechanical judging with how they're built, the craftsmanship and things of that nature that they judge on. There's been some weird ones up there. One guy made one out of a watermelon one time.
Very exciting.
Okay, all right.
So there we've added the astronomy portion to my presentation.
right.
We got it back. The good news. All right. So the first part of our trip, we went to Lake George. So Lake George, it used to be like this play area of the rich and famous. It still kind of is. So there's all kinds of people with massive houses and big expensive hotels. We're not into that. We wanted a nice area where you could hike and climb and kayak and all that stuff. And there's a lot of that in that area too. So if you look at this map here, we stayed about right here. We tried not to be in the town because if you've ever been to Gatlinburg, it's a lot like that.
Oh, gosh.
It was a mob of people and touristy and didn't really like the town a whole lot, but the hiking was pretty good. And it was a good warm up for our later hikes. So we did some hiking over here on the west side of the lake. As you can see, we hiked the Pinnacle Trail there. And then on the right-hand side, the east side of it, we went on Pilot Knob Trail. We went horseback riding over here on the west side. And we also kayaked on the lake briefly. I don't have any photos of that. I do not recommend doing that. It was not very fun. The lake is very rolly and there's lots of boat traffic and there wasn't really much to see kayaking wise. Like we like a good kayaking trip in the wilderness or on a trail, like a water trail. You know, it was not very pleasant. So I don't recommend the kayaking on the lake, but everything else on that list was really great. And then later on in our trip, we went up here to Shelving Rock Falls, Shelving Rock Mountain, and Sleeping Beauty Mountain. So we did all that in about 3 days. And I'm going to show you some pictures from that here in a second. First of all, the Pinnacle Trail was a fairly easy trail. It started over here in this parking area and then went up this. I don't believe it went all the way to the top here. I think it was somewhere in here. So it really wasn't that hard of a climb, but it had a really excellent view because you can see there's a lot of elevation here. And so it was a nice view overlooking the lake. You could see the really expensive Sagamore Hotel, as well as some of the other boats and things that were going on. It was a nice view. Not the nicest view, but it was a nice view. And it was a good preparation for the later things. This is what the summit looked like. So kind of nice. Then we did the Pilot Knob Trail later in the day, because again, that was a really short hike. So we had room for 2 hikes in that day. The Pilot Knob Trail, we actually had an issue because on the GPS, it told us to go further north and we ended up on a beach, which was definitely not right. So we ended up having to go back south a little bit. And we finally found the Pilot Knob Trailhead right here. It was kind of hidden, so it's kind of hard to find. And it was a paved trail at the beginning. It was very nice for beginners, I think. And it kind of wound around with some switchbacks up here. There was a beautiful gazebo with a nice overlook. It was very nice. And then we continued from there along this trail that went along this ridge to a nice waterfall. And that was very nice. I don't have too many pictures of that part though. I haven't processed all my photos yet. Don't have all the pictures from that. But there's a few.
5mm, are you? You haven't developed them?
No,
Okay.
no, I just edit them until they look nice.
Hey, Rob,
Yes,
were there a lot of people on these trails that you would feel comfortable?
there weren't a lot of people at all. I mean, there were people, but they were few and far between. Like in the town, as I was saying, the town I didn't like a whole lot. There were lots of people, but on the hiking trails, no, it was pretty clear. It was
But
nice.
you would, if I would feel safe if I wanted to take a hike on one of those trails.
For these, absolutely, definitely.
Okay,
Some of the
Good.
trails we went on later in the trip, maybe not, but this one was totally clear. It was,
okay. Great.
we did some horseback riding on the next day, which was very nice. My wife's a lot more of a horseback rider than I am, though. It's kind of painful after a while, hurts your legs. So I can deal with like an hour of that, but if you go for a 4-hour ride, no, I can't do that. She loves it. She would love to do that, but not me.
Rob,
Yep.
is the water in Lake George still drinkable?
I do not know. I didn't try to drink it.
No?
So I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah,
apparently it's pretty
so,
clean. It is?
Yeah, I mean that the water in Lake George was considered drinkable. We used to camp there, and we had like plenty of drinking water.
Yeah.
Actually, we camped on one of the islands. You know, which is really nice because they're remote. I mean, you don't have a lot of people, and it's like have the whole place to ourselves. And of course, we had all the water that we needed.
Yep.
I
I
was
did
just
hear it's very
wondering
drinkable.
if that's still the case.
Yep, absolutely. I did hear it's very drinkable.
Uh-huh.
In terms of being clean, I don't know if you should drink it though. So I wouldn't recommend just drinking out of the lake. Particularly with all the boats driving around in the lake. I don't know. So another day, we went to Shelving Rock Falls. It's a little further north on the lake because it's a really long lake. So it was about a 45-minute to an hour drive north. And the Shelving Rock Falls was actually kind of hard to find. Like the parking area was in here, but the path was not clearly marked. So I used my phone to try and figure out how we could get there from there. There apparently were a couple of paths here, one there and one here along the river. And we did get there pretty easily. And there were a bunch of people around the falls area, kind of swimming in the waterfall and stuff like that. But it was a pretty nice hike and it was a nice waterfall to view. And in terms of that day, we visited this stuff over here and then later this stuff over here. So this is the Shelving Rock Falls. This is something I'll talk about a little later in the talk, just to show you. And then we hiked up this little hill here. I'm not going to call it a mountain. It's like a little hill. Even though they called it Shelving Rock Mountain, it really wasn't that high. It didn't take us that long, but it was a very nice place to go up to. And it was right next to the other one. So that's why we decided to do that one too. Here was Shelving Rock Falls. So you could see a picture of what it looked like. Then later on, we went up Sleeping Beauty Mountain. This was a little further back, as I showed you a minute ago on this little thing. We had to drive on a four-wheel drive road to get there first. It's about maybe a 15-20-minute drive up this four-wheel drive road. And then we hiked from there. So this is where we parked after driving on the four-wheel drive trail. And then we hiked up here, hiked over here, and then we reached the summit. And that was the best hike of the whole part of the trip there. The entire Lake George section, that was a very nice place.
Did you run into any little people with various afflictions?
Because it's Sleeping Beauty. So I ran into just
Oh,
one.
wait. That's right, it is.
I ran into just one,
And which one was that, Rob?
this one.
That
That was my Sleeping Beauty right there. Yeah, but we did have a fantastic view from up there. I mean, the other ones had a decent view, but this was a really good view, I thought. And then let's continue from there.
That was cool.
Another thing that we saw that we found very interesting was some ghost pipe. Now, I mean, I've seen it before growing up in the mountains of Western Maryland, but not a lot. It's very rare to see it poking out of the ground. And on this hike, they were everywhere. So I figured I'd take some
Certain
pictures.
elevation?
It has to do with when it's visible, like when it's fruiting. Like mushrooms, they only come up every now and then. And of course, only in certain locations. So it's rare to see, but they were everywhere on this hike. It was crazy. I guess it had rained or something.
Are you a mushroom aficionado?
No, and I don't really think that's a mushroom, but it's an
Ah.
interesting plant because it has no chlorophyll. And so it's like clear. It's a very rare kind of plant.
Is it
So I think it's very
translucent?
cool. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know all the details. I'm not a botanist. Maybe Sheila could tell us more. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not a botanist either, and I don't know, but it is not a fungus, it is a plant.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, okay.
It is a
As
plant.
you said, it's a plant with no chlorophyll, it's bizarre.
It's a very rare kind of plant and it's very pretty to see. So I figured I
Cool.
gotta take some pictures of that. After we got done at Lake George, we went on to Lincoln, New Hampshire, and both of us liked Lincoln, New Hampshire a lot more than Lake George. There were a lot less people and there were some much better hikes to do. So we stayed at the Riverbank Motel and Cabins and we hiked a loop over. So let me get this pointer working. Hold on. There we go. We stayed here in Lincoln. We did a loop trail here on the Alpine Tundra area of Mount Lafayette and a couple of other peaks that I'm going to show you in a couple minutes. Then on another day, we drove up Mount Washington, and then on our way back, we hit the Flume Gorge. And it was kind of a rainy day on the way back, you know, after we came down from Mount Washington, it started raining. And that made the Flume Gorge even better. It cleared it of people, so there were no other people in the park. And the river was rushing more intensely, so there were better waterfalls. And in addition to that, it gave a misty atmosphere, which made the pictures come out better. So it was good for a number of reasons. So I would recommend Flume Gorge in the rain. It's much better. So here was our hike on Mount Lafayette. We started down here and we went up this ridge at the top of Mount Lafayette, hit Mount Lincoln, Little Haystack, I think, and then came back down. I think that's correct. And we hit the Falling Waters Trail on the way down, which was very nice. There were some nice waterfalls in there that were definitely worth seeing. All right, so this is a photo in the Alpine Tundra. The trail is right along this little ridge here. And this is a rock that's often covered in water and it reflects the sun. So I think it was called like sun rock or something like that, or shining rock. That's what it was. And so it shines in the sun. And it did, although it wasn't totally covered in water. But that was very cool. And we definitely enjoyed that hike. It was lovely. Although it was rather exhausting. Compared to the ones I showed you before, this hike took like 6 hours at least. It was a long hike. And there was a shack on the way up for hikers. You know, it had the, what do they call it? The hikers club. I don't remember right now. But what they do is they have a number of shacks set up around the country for people to hike and sleep and rest and get some food, get some water. It's very nice. Oh, Appalachian Mountain Club. Took me a minute, but yeah, Appalachian Mountain Club. Then we went up Mount Washington on a different day. So Mount Washington, again, is a very interesting mountain. They've recorded the highest wind speed on Earth ever measured from the top of Mount Washington. It frequently has really intense wind and really intense storms. It is not a place to be exposed during one of those storms. In fact, a lot of the places we went to, even though they were in the alpine tundra, were still like 60 degrees, still fairly nice. It was not that temperature on the top of Mount Washington. It was just a little above freezing. So middle of the summer,
In August?
it was like 40 degrees.
What was the world's fastest?
300 something, 333.
100?
Yeah, I think that was right. Oh, 200.
Did you see the sign?
230. Yeah.
The sign that says
I didn't write that down. Yeah, 230.
some of the worst.
Their weather observatory on that deck.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is a big building. It's got the observatory as well as like the gift shop, as well as the place where people come up to observe, as well as the train depot for the little train that goes up Mount Washington. It's a big facility up at the top.
Is it wind powered?
I do not know, but it definitely could be.
Seems like it'd be really easy to get it powered by
I
wind.
think, but if you put a wind turbine up there, it might break. I don't know.
Big time, the rolling time.
And the other problem is it would freeze. So, you know,
The
they
buildings
lock
are
up.
held down with chains. Did you see that?
Oh, yes,
See the
yeah.
thick chains?
It's an interesting
Keep the buildings
place.
From flying away?
Yes,
You're not, did the foundation strongly enough?
it's crazy up there.
They need chains.
They need chains.
So we didn't do any hiking on Mount Washington. We drove up. Even on this day when it was not that stormy, it was still crazy windy.
Rob, I was scared to drive up it, so we hiked up it.
Yep.
It was a 5-mile hike, and you're walking along the stream. Oh, it's a beautiful waterfall. Where's the trail? And it's just like up and up and up.
Yeah, it is a dangerous place. So if you're going to go hiking, be careful. Be careful of Mount Washington. We did not do any hiking on that for a good reason.
up at the peak?
Yes.
Okay.
You can drive up or you can take the train up.
Hey, don't they sell shirts? I survived Mount Washington.
I bet they do.
Rob,
Yes.
did you see the sign at the top?
What's that?
Did you see the sign up at the top that says this area has some of the worst weather recorded?
Yes.
There is a sign at the top of Mount Washington that says,
Yep.
this area has some of the worst weather recorded.
Yep. They also have a museum up
Which is
there.
which can be pretty intimidating.
Yep, absolutely. So that's not a place.
Wow.
I'm not sure I have that right now, but you can look it up. Then the Flume Gorge, as I mentioned, later on in that day when we were coming down from Mount Washington, it started raining. We went to the Flume Gorge. That's absolutely beautiful.
That's beautiful.
They turn it into a touristy exhibit, but I'll tell you what, they have some very nice trails and it's just a gorgeous place. If you like waterfalls, there's a lot of them. It is definitely beautiful.
Well, you know, when they build
Hmm?
things to
Lovely.
facilitate tourists,
Gorgeous.
you know, like walkways and that sort of thing, that's going to bring in the crowds.
What's that? I'm not sure what she said.
When they build planks and walkways like that,
guess.
that will bring in the crowds.
Oh, certainly. And as I said, they do charge admission for this one. Like you can hike up Mount Lafayette, the thing I showed you before, for free. But with this, you got to pay. They turned it into a tourist exhibition, but it's definitely one worthwhile. It's worth seeing. All right.
Well, I mean, I guess that's just something we have to kind of accept, I guess.
Absolutely.
You know?
So then after that, we headed up to Maine. And the first place we went in Maine was Bar Harbor. As you can see here. This is where we stayed in Bar Harbor. And this is the loop road, which you can drive with your car. Of course, it's a very nice paved road that you can look at. It's one of the busiest parks in America, so there's lots of traffic on that road. I will say that when we went, the traffic on the road wasn't so bad, but anytime we tried to park, it was a fight to get into a parking space. It was like shopping at a mall. It was so crazy trying to get a parking place. So yeah, that's one thing about Bar Harbor in Acadia. You got to watch the traffic a little bit. And I bet you if the coronavirus wasn't happening, you might even go really slow on the road too with all the traffic. So it wasn't too bad, but it could be worse, I'm sure. So we did a few things. We hiked to this bar over here. It's this little island. It's the reason it's called Bar Harbor, because it's got a little bar island at the top. We got Acadia National Park. Like I said, we drove the loop road. We hiked something called the Beehive Trail, which is down here. We hiked South Bubble, which is up in here. It's in a little mountain right here. And then we took a wildlife cruise from the harbor here out to see some wildlife. We took a kayaking tour, which was actually to the west. They took us over to the west side of Acadia. It's the only time we went there on our trip, but it was definitely nice. And then we drove up Cadillac Mountain, which is in the middle here. It's the tallest mountain in Acadia. But you have to get tickets to drive up that. It's like timed tickets to avoid traffic so that it's not so bad. Because like I said, everywhere was a fight to get places. And if you're driving up a big mountain with narrow roads and cliffs and stuff, you don't want to be waiting in line to get up there. So they have timed tickets. It wasn't expensive though.
I was gonna say,
No, it's like $1, $6. It's
it's
cheap.
registration of paper.
Yep, it's just to avoid traffic. All right, so here was our hike to the bar. I actually took this picture over here from the top of Cadillac Mountain, but there was no good way to take a picture of this bridge, this little walkway to get over to the bar from there. It wouldn't have looked as good.
Is that
So-
bar always there?
No, and that's what I'm about to tell you. So the tide goes in and out, of course, and it's a huge shift because of the latitude of Bar Harbor. So this little bar going across the Bar Island, I suppose, this little sandbar disappears underneath the waves every couple hours. So you got like I think it's an hour-and-a-half window during which you can walk across that and then get back. And if you miss your window, you cannot get across. It's not that swimmable. It's cold water. It's like 50 something degrees. So you're stuck for 9 hours.
There's no boats or anything.
I mean, you can call for a rescue
Yeah,
to take you across, but you're going to pay hundreds of dollars to get it.
right.
So you don't want to get stuck on that little bar over there. Yeah, that's one thing you should note if you ever try and hike across there. But here's the view that we got. Sorry, here's the view we got from the other side. It was cool.
The hell we got there?
Oh, there's plenty of them. All right, and this is another trail that we hiked that was in Acadia. This is the Beehive Trail. So this little beach over here was called Sand Beach, and this is where we parked. It's like the parking area. We did actually walk down to look at the beach briefly. It's pretty much the only sand beach for miles and miles because, you know, the ocean up there just churns up any of that kind of stuff and washes it out to sea. This one gets replenished because of the rocks around getting beat up, and it's kind of protected in there. So the sand kind of stays there. And I got to say it like this because it's not the kind of sand that we're used to. It was really just crushed, rough rock. There aren't too many sand beaches up there. But basically, the Beehive, we had to walk across traffic, walk across that lovely loop road, and then we hiked up the Beehive. It was a lovely little cliffside trail, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second.
Oh, geez.
It had a lot of handles and a lot of bars and stuff for you to hold on to help you get up there, to assist you. It was on the side of a cliff. It was definitely beautiful, took lots of nice pictures. But I will say this was one unique experience because it's the only hike I've ever done on the side of a cliff and waited in line on the side of the cliff. Because the problem is it's one way, you know, it's narrow, it's just these handholds, and you have to wait for other people to do it so you can get your turn. And so you're waiting on the side of this cliff saying, okay, can you please go? Can you please go? Can you please go? And they're scared, so they don't want to go.
People coming back down.
Another way,
Oh, okay.
another route. Yep, there's a different route to get back down. But they've really made it one way. Up. Up.
Go swimming in the little pond once you get up there.
We didn't do any swimming. It was cold. Everything was cold. Maybe it was all right there, but we didn't do it.
Did you do any binoculars, try anything in Arcadia?
There really wasn't any clear nights. Yeah, it was nasty.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
incredible skies and things.
We got actually one good night later in the trip. I can tell you about in a few minutes. But it wasn't here, unfortunately. All right. The next thing that we did was one of the Bubbles trails. So you hike up here and then you hike up to this overlook here. This is South Bubble. There's also North Bubble. It's up there, but we went to South Bubble. And then the sun was setting. We really had to go back anyway. But got some nice pictures, as you can see. This is a very famous rock in Acadia. And it is literally like perched on the side of a cliff. And it is massive. So if that thing were ever to fall and you're underneath, it'd be a very bad day. It's tons, but you really can't move it. So you can climb on it and whatever. It's pretty
Sure.
solid.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. But that's the iconic picture. Everybody likes to pose with that. Yeah, we hope it never falls. All right, and then for our wildlife cruise, what we did is we started here a little bit north of Bar Harbor, and we went out behind the bar and then headed down this way. And this little island here is a very interesting island. Every now and then you get one of these islands that the wildlife just loves. Like for instance, when we were up in Alaska, there's this South Marble Island, and it's just this one island is just covered in sea lions and all these birds and all these animals, and they just cover it. And this little island was Egg Island, and it was very similar to that other one that I just mentioned. They just swarm it. And here, of course, it was seals instead of sea lions. And there were, I think there were some pelicans as well. There were some very interesting birds all around there, puffins as well. Yeah, all around there. So it was lovely. And then we drove up the next day, Cadillac Mountain, before we headed out. We had our time ticket and we went up and took a good look. It was a nice view overlooking the whole area. We got our first good look at Bar Harbor from above. And you guys already saw another picture from the top of Cadillac Mountain, but it was definitely a lovely view. And then we headed up north to Millinocket, Maine. Now, Millinocket, Maine is a tiny little town. Compared to what we saw in Bar Harbor with all the crowds, it was abandoned almost. Like everything closed before like 6 o'clock. So getting food and stuff like that in the evening was a lot more difficult. We stayed here in between these two lakes at the Big Moose Inn and Campground. It was definitely very nice because you had a beautiful view out of our cabin onto this lake. It was lovely. And we could have gone kayaking on that lake as well if we had more time. But our main focus when we went to Millinocket was to go to Baxter State Park and climb that big mountain. As you can see on the left here, that's a picture I took at the top. So Mount Katahdin, north of the Appalachian Trail, it has an absolutely massive area of alpine tundra on top, like 2 square miles of alpine tundra up there on top. It's huge compared to the other places we went. It's just massive. And I mean, it's a huge table almost up there. And it is definitely beautiful. There are a number of ways that people go up Mount Katahdin. It is something that does take all day. It took us like 9 or 10 hours to do it. We went up from Katahdin Stream Campground. This is actually
only take 2 hours.
this. Yeah, it doesn't
guys
take
must have
2
been
hours.
lollygagging
It
it.
doesn't take 2 hours. That takes much longer. Yeah, Google is not correct on that. Sorry, but this hike did take quite a long time. And up here, it got kind of treacherous. This beginning part was a pretty easy hike going up the little ridge. And then you get to this area where you're leaving the tree line. This was kind of rough. And so in the end, we decided not to go back down this way because the handholds, like I was telling you on the Beehive Trail, there were handholds here too, and they did not look safe to go back down. So we decided to take a different route to come back down. We ended up going back down over here to the Able campground instead. And on our way down, we actually got to talking to some people who were also on the way down. We had met them up at the top and we befriended them. And when we got down to the bottom, they gave us a ride back to our car. It was absolutely awesome because after hiking for 10 hours, this little stretch here of 2 miles would be the longest 2 miles you've ever hiked. It would have been awful.
What time did you start out?
We started at around 9 o'clock, I think it was.
Oh, okay, so that's.
Yeah. It was getting close to sunset. It wasn't sunset or anything yet, but it was late.
Yeah.
And we did have trouble getting dinner that night because we went back and everything was closed. Yeah, but we did find one place that was open for another half hour and we got in. But yeah, we did befriend some people. They were so helpful and we don't actually have their contact info, but we thank them so much. They were fantastic. But I'm going to show you some more photos from here. This is the little ridge going up. And I do have more pictures, but again, I haven't processed everything yet, but it's pretty crazy going up. And here's a photo of us on the way up. This isn't the top yet. This is the top. So in this direction, this is where we came from. It's gently sloping to get up there. And then you get above the tree line and there's a huge table of alpine tundra. Well, on the other side of the mountain is this crazy cliff faces. They call this the knife edge trail for obvious reasons. It's literally like a knife. It would be a harrowing experience to hike along this ridge over here. We did not do that, but you could if you wanted to. It is a trail.
Many people who hiked the whole trail who were finishing up.
There were a few. I don't know how many, but a lot of people that we saw, talked to, were doing the same thing we were. And a number of them actually went up the way we did and said, we're going back down a different way. I would say that I would not have wanted to go up the Able route because it was steep. It was pretty steep. But the handholds on the other route, no, I didn't want to go back down that way. It just wouldn't have been safe. Here was us at the end. After all those many, many hours, this is the end of the trail. Right before we got in the car and drove back to our car. We definitely appreciated them. Then we headed toward a more relaxing part of our trip because I was exhausted after doing Mount Katahdin. So in Cape Cod, there are a number of places to stay, a number of towns and cities out there. And I studied it for a while and I had finally settled on the Falmouth area because there was some nice kayaking there. I found a nice Airbnb that was there that was very, very generous. Martha's Vineyard was right next to that. So we hitched a ferry over to get to that. So it was a nice location for what we wanted to do. There are things further out. If you want to get to Provincetown or something like that, you probably wouldn't want to stay where we did. But I think where we did fit our personalities and what we wanted to do. So one thing we did was we biked a rail trail that was over here. I'll show you a better image of that in a minute. It's called the Shining Sea Bikeway. It was very nice, about 10 miles. We kayaked in some lakes that were really close to our bed and breakfast. They had kayaks that they loaned to us. Another day, we went up and toured the Cape Cod Maritime Museum over here. And then we toured the Ouida Pirate Museum. So that is a pirate ship that was discovered in the 80s. And they very carefully analyzed everything and collected it all and turned the entire thing into a museum. They collected all the treasure from it, all the stuff from it, yeah, it was underwater. Yeah, and they collected all of it and they did a lot of work to preserve it. And then they made a nice museum out of it. It was really cool.
Is the ship still underwater? Or do they?
I think it was mostly disintegrated,
Yeah, okay.
but they have parts of it. They had things in the museum that came from it. Plenty of things that came from it. I mean, the whole museum was from it. Yeah, but it was definitely cool. Then another day, we spent the entire day in Martha's Vineyard, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then our way back, we visited Plymouth Rock briefly, and I'll talk about that. So our biking that we did, basically our place that we stayed, our bed and breakfast was right here. And so it was a short ride. You could either go this way or there were some back roads that you could then get to the Shining Sea Bikeway. And our bed and breakfast did have bikes to loan us if we wanted to. But we ended up bringing our own because, you know, your own bike is usually better. And we biked this whole 10-mile trail. And we actually did this part, I think, a couple times because it was really pretty by the sea and everything. And let's see if I can get to the next one. Here's the kayaking that we did. The kayaking, let me go back to that map. The kayaking was literally right next to our place. You know, we were able to roll them right down the hill, right out the gate in front of his place and get right in the water. And we saw some birds and some other things. It was absolutely lovely. So it was good kayaking. Wasn't a very big lake, but we didn't exactly want to go in the ocean or anything like that with the kayaks. So it was a good little couple-hour trip. Here was the Ouida Pirate Museum, as you can see. We found a pirate standing outside, as you can see. And then we went to Martha's Vineyard. We spent a whole day there. So we started in Oak Bluffs and we got tickets to the public transportation system. They have a series of buses that drive all around. And if you go to Martha's Vineyard, I very highly recommend that. That was definitely the best way to get around. You can bring bikes and some people do that and they bike around, but it would take you many, many, many hours. It's much, much bigger than you think it is, I would say. So if you want to get around Martha's Vineyard, the best way is to pay $8 and take the buses. And you can go anywhere you want all day long on that $8 bus ticket. And that's definitely worth it. So we started up there in Oak Bluffs. We headed down to Edgartown, and then we headed over here to Aquina. And this was actually what I mainly wanted to see. That was my focus. I was like laser focused on wanting to get there because there's some cliffs there that are just absolutely spectacular. And those cliffs look like something out of Zion, and they're on the East Coast. There are very few places on the East Coast that are like that. So I wanted to get there and take photos and explore it. And I was all about that. But Lindsay wanted to see a couple of sites on the way, so we did. The first one we did was the oldest carousel in this country, which is the Flying Horses Carousel. It was in Oak Bluffs. And as you can see, there's my wife riding it. She had to ride the carousel. I did not do
The
that.
oldest still functioning one, is that it, or the
Yeah.
first one ever made?
No, I believe what you said, the oldest
Oldest
functioning
functioning.
one. I'm sure that they had something older probably, but yeah,
What year?
I don't remember that. No, sorry. Nope, don't have that, but you can look it up. Then she wanted to see these gingerbread houses that were in Oak Bluffs. It was in all the brochures and all that, and she had to see them. There were more than 100 houses that looked like this, and they're in a little community.
Are they residences?
Yeah, they're residences, they're people's
They're not
houses.
really made out of gingerbread.
No, but they call them the
I'm looking at
gingerbread
it, like, that
houses.
looks like 2x4s to me.
It is. They call them the gingerbread houses because they're these quaint little houses. I honestly did not see the appeal. I'm sorry. My wife loved them, and so she had to have her picture taken in front of a few of them, and they were pretty cool, I will say, but I don't know. I didn't really see it. Wasn't really my thing, but it was totally her thing, and that's awesome. She let me do my things, so I let her do her things, by all means. Then we got to what I wanted to do. This is what I was all about doing. The Aquina Cliffs, and these are two pictures facing two different directions, just to clarify here. And these rocks are just all along the beach there, and there's so many different views, and this is just a mere fraction of what you could take pictures of. And I took many, I just haven't processed them all yet. Get this back over here. There's some more there. The cool thing about this is just all the different colors. Like there's reds, there's yellows, there's grays, there's so many different colors, and they're all in different areas. They're like separated. And so it just makes it absolutely beautiful. So there's all the colors of the rainbow. And some of the Native Americans, because this was a Native American area, They had a nice museum. We did tour the museum. And these cliffs, they used to take the clay that makes up these cliffs and they made sculptures and things out of it. But they don't do that anymore because of course it will destroy the cliffs over time. But the Native Americans did used to do that. And they did have some on display. Yes?
Common on beach chair rock formation.
Oh, yeah.
So it's clay?
Clays and rocks and all kinds of things like that. Yeah, a lot of it is clay. Yep, so it's very fragile, like it could be destroyed. And it will over time weather as well.
No.
There's another thing that I need to mention about this, and that is, we did not know, but there is a nude beach right in front of these cliffs, which was a little bit awkward when we were going down there to take our pictures, but I think they did understand. We kind of raced past the nudists to get to the rocks area, but yeah, there was plenty of nudists there. It was a nude beach. One of the only
I mean, I
nude
guess that's a
beaches.
group of people that aren't known for, being ashamed.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And I don't believe they minded. They didn't say anything. So we just headed off and took our pictures.
You didn't say like, hey, take off your clothes.
Yes, the main scenic area was past where the nudists were. Like the best looking rocks were over there. So we went past them and just did our thing and came back later on. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. One of the only nude beaches on the East Coast. And then on our way out, we saw Plymouth Rock. We've heard about it
Is it
before.
really?
It
Is
was,
it really Plymouth Rock? Because I've heard
I don't know.
so many stories.
yeah, there's a lot of stories and
just
I don't know. But here's what I will say, even if it is or is not, it was not the best display in the world. I would probably not go. And I was like, oh, we're there. We're pretty much there. It's a half hour away. Let's go see it. Why not? But literally, this is like it. Like if I was designing this museum, I would put a museum at the top of this hill with all kinds of exhibits in it. There was nothing. It was like hotels and banks and stuff like that up at the top of the hill. I don't know. We got a better display of information about Plymouth Rock and all that stuff when we were at the museum in Cape Cod. Like that Maritime Museum had some excellent displays about Plymouth Rock and landing of the Pilgrims and all that stuff. Those displays would have been awesome here. They weren't there. They did apparently have a museum downtown that you had to drive several blocks away from this to get to, and it was closed. So I have no idea what's in that museum, but in the other museum, it was nice. So that, I believe, is the end of my presentation.
Cool.
It was good. I do have thousands of more pictures, but don't need to show you all the pictures. And I haven't even processed all the pictures. It's a work in progress.
Well, did you get the bumper sticker on your car from Mount Washington?
I did get it and I threw it away. Yeah, because I really don't need that. I mean, my Jeep's been up all kinds of mountains. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't have self-esteem issues or anything?
No, it can handle that. I mean, I've driven a Jeep up Mauna Kea in Hawaii too.
You said one of the roads. was
Not
a
your
four-
Jeep.
Not mine.
Right.
You said one of the roads is a four-wheel drive road. Does that mean you had
Yeah.
to rent four-wheelers or you had to have a specific?
You had to have a four-wheel drive car like a pickup truck or some kind of intermediate SUV or Jeep or some other thing like that. I mean, I've been on trails, like trails where you wouldn't take like an intermediate SUV with, I've been in my Jeep on those kinds of trails. It wasn't one of those. It was just a dirt road. There's a little rough. You wouldn't want to take a sedan, basically. But it was recommended for.
Rob, how was the light pollution in the area?
I
Were
would
you
say
able
in
to
a number
see
of places,
any
there were some-
skies?
I would say in a number of places it wasn't great. The whole trip, except for like one night, it wasn't that clear. Like we had the moon during part of our trip. We had clouds a lot. We didn't get a lot of good weather for observing. And in a lot of the places we went, like Lake George, there's a lot of light pollution there, at least in the little town of Lake George. And then in Bar Harbor, it's in the middle of a little city. I'm sure in Acadia it'd be nice, but in Bar Harbor, not really. But when we went to Millinocket at that Big Moose campground, it was actually awesome. And I had like one clear night, but on that one clear night, I had to wake up at 3 a.m. to go hiking up the mountain. So I couldn't exactly stay up and observe, having to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It didn't work. Other
Just wonders.
Yeah, it would have been nice, but no.
They just announced that there's a section in Maine that they designated as a dark sky area.
Oh, fantastic.
They have astronomy weekends up there.
That sounds good.
Well, there's the Mars thing going on up there, the Mars retreat.
I can turn this around.
That's in the middle of Maine.
What? Jeff, who was next?
So next up, we have Fred and Greg that will talk about their observing activities over the summer. And Rob, if you don't mind, can you set it up?
I suppose. All right, you need to tell me what it
It's
is.
in the same folder.
All right. So what are you doing here, Fred?
Yeah, open up the folder, Rob. Oh, you have,
I have it.
oh, sorry, yes, you
I'll
see
put it
on
over here if
screen.
you want. I can handle it.
Yeah, Fred knows which one it is.
All right, I'll let you do it then.
I can't handle it, yell for help.
Wait,
And
it's gonna be
it's-
a duet?
Is it still sharing?
No, I turned off the sharing. so
Okay.
We'll have to turn that back on once it starts.
Yeah.
Do you want to share the other screen? That might work. Here, let me do that real quick. Sorry. I'm going to share the other screen before you do it, just in case. All right, so now it's sharing. So if you start your presentation, it should end up over there.
I did click it.
I hope I shared the right screen. Let me just make sure it's red real quick.
Might wanna read it.
Yep, I'll fix that. Fixed. I'm just gonna make sure we shared the correct screen.
Yeah, you're gonna wanna swap displays again.
Let me do that first. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to fix that. Yeah, hold on a second. I lost the connection. There you go. Share. That screen. Screen 2. That's screen 2. Share. Not the wrong one?
Swap it in PowerPoint again.
Yeah. Mouse over here. Swap.
Yep.
I hope we're good.
I think you're good. I think if Fred just starts off blank.
It's my style.
That's it. Thank you, Fred.
Here you go. Sorry.
Okay,
It's sharing.
I hope so.
can
I hope they
everybody
didn't-
not see me, but can see a blank screen? Oh, of course, everybody's muted. so how
Just
would I
tell me
know?
to give you a thumbs up.
All right. Well, we'll just get going here.
That's right.
This will be a mini talk as opposed to a Rob Long talk. And it will be centered on astronomy. And we'll be talking about, I'll be talking about, and Greg is around
just ran
somewhere.
away.
He did, okay.
Coming back.
I can talk until he comes back. And it'll be about what I did this past summer, which was pretty much what I did last summer and last autumn and last winter and last spring. And probably the same thing I'll be doing this coming autumn, winter, spring, summer too. So, so how do I advance? Oh, hit down here.
Spacebar or
Okay.
click the
Here we
button.
go. So, as you know, Greg is the observing chairperson. What am I clicking? Nothing happened. Oh, I gotta do this twice.
There you
That's
go.
why. There we are. And as you probably recall, I'll often get emails out on the IO group to muster up people for a clear sky observing / imaging session whenever the weather looks like it's going to be cooperative. And sometimes the weather doesn't look cooperative, but I want to go out anyway because I like to get out and play with my telescope. This shot here is of the one of the cloudy sunsets at Cheslin Preserve that it's about a half hour, 35 minutes from here that we often go to observe at as one of our darker sites. It's about a half a magnitude darker than Mount Cuba here. It's got very nice horizons, but there is a fair amount of light pollution around the horizon from Westchester, Kennett Square, and Coatesville. The western horizon is the darkest area because it looks out towards Lancaster where there's much less population. But overall, it serves as a really good spot to use our telescopes and see stuff you can't normally see in your backyard. So we're going to be talking about the observing sessions we've done there this summer, and just not just at Cheslin, but at the Blue Mountain Vista Observatory Field, which is the property. It's a 12-acre property, 10 or 12-acre property owned by Frank Colosimo, who's one of our members also, lives up in New Ringgold, Pennsylvania, and he keeps an acre of the field mowed during the summer and plowed during the winter to have various astronomy clubs go out there and observe or image, whatever they prefer doing. He's got a porta potty out in the field. He's got electricity out there. He has telescope pads, square concrete pads to set up your Dob on or your small telescope. And it's a very convenient place to go. It's private. You just need to send Frank an email, go to his website, star-watcher.org, and let him know that you're going to be coming up there. He's very accommodating. He usually comes out and visits you in the field to see what you're up to and just introduce himself. And on his website, there's also a donation button. So whenever I go up there, I usually go and do a little PayPal donation to him, because he does go to a fair amount of expense to keep the field mowed, keep the porta potty clean, and just do whatever you got to do to keep the field there amenable for everyone. And so what we're also going to look at later on is what I feel is the scariest object in the sky. It's an positively eerie object that I look to every September, October, this time of year around Halloween. It's a really nice object to see when you want to get freaky. And of course, Greg is going to do a little talk on his backyard experiments he did recently, and I've got a few photographs about that. So moving along, we're going to talk about Cheslin first. We have 3 sessions there this summer, June 16th, July 30th, and September 2nd. That photograph of NGC 2891 is, I think, Rob's. I think I stole it from your folder that you sent around. And we looked at that object, although it didn't look like that. It was very, very dim there. On June 16th, it was a fairly pleasant night. There were several of us there: Kathy Coons, Robert Stack, Greg Lee, Scott Jackson, Scott's son, Brandon, and Rob and myself. The first quarter moon was out that night. And so we didn't spend a lot of time looking at very many deep sky objects, but I spent a fair amount of time looking at the moon. We saw a number of globular clusters, which are easy to see when the moon's out. Some of the brighter nebulae, a lot of double stars we looked at. And there were various telescopes and binoculars out there that night. Of the scopes, Scott had his 10-inch DIY, he built it himself scope. Greg had his 16-inch Explorer Scientific. Robert Stack had his 6-inch Quantum Mac, a really nice, pretty scope, gives some really nice sharp tack views. And Rob had the new, to the club, 8-inch Meade, which worked out pretty good. Rob, did Rob disappear? There he is. Is that available for loan, or is that?
We're still getting it ready. It's not ready
Okay.
yet.
And I had my 18-inch, which I normally don't take out to look at the moon, but it had been a while since I've been out because of the weather we've been having for a number of months before this session. And I just wanted to get the 18-inch out someplace local so I can make sure I remember how to set it up and work the thing. By 11 o'clock that night, the clouds were rolling in and all of us had left the field by 11 o'clock, by midnight. On the 30th, there were another gathering. Kathy Coons was there then, Greg, Dave Grosky joined us that night. We had your 8-inch yellow scope that I call it, I think. And Robert Stack was there again with a different, didn't have his Quantum Mac with him. I forget what he had with him.
Yeah, homemade, some kind of rich field scope or something.
Yeah, it has some nice views in that. And there was Chris Trunk, I think, or Chris Myers, was it? Chris Trunk? I think it might be Chris Trunk.
Yeah, I think it's Chris.
Yeah, and my buddy Lionel from Chesmont, who used to be a member here too, he was there with his astrophysics 130 millimeter apochromatic refractor. The skies that night were quite milky. There was the western wildfires are still going on, and there were a number of passing clouds coming through by 11 p.m. And basically, we were all off the field by 1 a.m. Well, what I do every time when I'm out, I always take my unihedron sky quality meter and takes sky quality reader meetings at the zenith. And normally, Cheslin has about 5.5 to 5.6 negative eye limiting magnitude skies there, about the same that they are down in Fair Hill. And but that night they were really, because of the wildfires and the clouds, it was really didn't get much past 5. But we still were able to see Jupiter and Saturn, rather unsteady views. The best views we saw that night, again, there was no moon that night, but the globular clusters, they held up fairly well. And but the galaxies and nebulae, because of the sky conditions, they were really pretty difficult to see. So the globular clusters we saw were M13, M10, M5, M92, M12, M3, M71. As you can see, there were many globs out during the summer. We saw M57, the ring, which is really, really bright, easy to see there, easy to see in your backyard too. M17, the swan, although it's down in Sagittarius where the swan is, it's kind of close to the horizon out there. It's in a lot of the muck, but it's still, because it's so bright, it comes through very well. We looked at the owl, the cat's eye is very bright. We were able to see that. And the eastern and western portions of the veil, which is pretty much at zenith, we were able to see that in my 18-inch fairly well with an O3 filter. And that came through nicely. The Whirlpool Galaxy, M51, the Splinter, were kind of dim. Not really anything to talk that much about, but there were quite a few double stars that we looked at. Lionel made me laugh. He had Almach in Andromeda in the scope, and he was complaining about how dim it was. And he's fresh off his cataract surgery. He was saying about how beautiful these double stars are. He's been looking at Almach, which is really one of the brightest pairs you can see. Beautiful, gorgeous orange and blue star. I'm looking through a scope, and this is a astrophysics apochromatic 130 millimeter scope, and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, boy, I've seen much better elsewhere. So I went back to my 18-inch, got it my 18-inch, and oh yeah, there's Almach, nice and bright. Then I hear Lionel say, oh, you got to come back and look. I took the blue filter off. He was looking at Jupiter earlier. He forgot to take the filter off. So, and Robert Stack sent an email to the IO group later on, talked about what Chris Trunk saw that they found in binoculars off of a Fuca's shoulder. And so they looked at it in their 80 millimeter, 100 millimeter scopes. And they determined it was kind of a dimmer version of the Pleiades. And they couldn't find it on their sky eye chart, but they looked it up later on and found out it was IC 4665, also called the Poseidon Trident cluster or the black swallowtail butterfly cluster, and it looked kind of like that. It does look kind of like a Pleiades. It's something I never saw before.
That shows up pretty well in binoculars if you're just standing around the top of Ophiuchus there.
And that's how he discovered it. He just scanned right into it. Yeah. Well, on September 2nd, it was a refractor night for me. I hadn't had my Stellar View 115 millimeter out in quite a while. So I want to get that out. It was a nice clear night. Kathy was there again. Greg, Dave again. Dave, what you have with you that night? The 8-inch yellow?
Yeah, the yellow 8-inch.
And Chris was there, Lionel again, myself. And this was the night after the storm. I think it was Ida.
Yeah.
And there was quite a few floods, and Route 1 was inaccessible at one point. It was actually closed down. And the preserve manager, when I got permission to get access to the site, said that he wasn't able to get to work that day because the bridge just north of the Chesney Preserve there on Embryville, that connects Embryville Road to Harvey's Bridge Road, was washed out. Was flooded, actually not washed out, but flooded, and he wasn't able to get to work. But by the time we got there that night, the roads were all fine, but we were all off to home before 1 a.m. But we ended up with some clear skies afterwards. Ida just blew out all the really crappy stuff that was floating around, and that smoke line that was coming from the wildfires, but pushed south of us through Virginia. So we had some really gorgeous skies when I went up to Blue Mountain Vista on September 6th, and again on September 10th. I wasn't about to pace up these really nice nights. Except I was up there almost alone. The guy in the background there with the large dot, that's John Homke with the Chesmont Club. That's another DIY 24-inch f3 Ostrowski mirror in that scope, which is it's an all feet on the ground observing with that scope. He uses the BIF, the binocular photon machine, which is really based on a night vision binocular device. So he uses that a lot in that scope. So he pulls in some really, really faint galaxies in there. My only criticism about it is that, it's a night vision thing. So it's got all these speckly, and it's green, it's got all these speckly things there. But you can look past that, you can really see some deep, very faint galaxy stuff in there. He had a beautiful view of the Veil Nebula, which actually looked three-dimensional. with the filament, the filaments in there. So I measured the sky quality that night. It was 6.2 Nelm. So we were almost a full magnitude darker than we were out of Cheslin previously, and better than half a magnitude darker than what Cheslin normally is. It was really an awesome night. Sky conditions were very steady. I was able to put some high power on a lot of objects. So I started going deep with the Pisces cloud, the Perseus galaxy cluster, and some brighter stuff with the blue snowball, which is one of my favorite objects, and NGC 246, which looked really cool, which is my Erie object I'm going to talk about later on. Because it's about a 2-hour drive to get up there, about an hour, 40 minutes to get back. I close down at 2 o'clock and I'm home in bed by 5:30 in the morning. So so I don't spend too much time on trying to not to nod out. The Pisces cloud, NGC 383, that's not something you normally see in your backyard. It's a nice string of rather dim galaxies, 13th, 14th, 15th magnitude galaxies. And they're 220 million light years distant. That always freaks me out when I look up what these objects, how far away they are and what I can see through a telescope. Igor, some of you probably know, he often goes, do you think anybody's looking back at us from there?
If they were, would it be long dead?
They might be, as we would be too.
220 million years ago.
Yeah, these galaxies are framed very nicely in my 3 super wide field ethos eyepieces, 110 degree apparent field of views. In the 13, the 10, and the 8 millimeters, they just look very nice. I usually like to try to put the real power, as much power as I can on them, because as you move up in power, the backgrounds become darker. The galaxy get a little more contrast against that black background, and they become a little more apparent to see. This is a screenshot from my Sky Tools program of the eyepiece view. I set it based on the sky conditions that are normally present at Cheslin, and what the sky would normally look like as far as the number of stars at Cheslin when I'm looking at the Pisces cloud, NGC 383. And moving to Blue Mountain Vista, getting up to that 6th magnitude and better, the other smaller galaxies come into view, the dimmer galaxies, then all fall off to the side. And more stars come into view too, making for a richer field in that field of view of the image, which is why I take that 2-hour trip to get up there, because you just can't get that locally. And for the times I went to the top of Spruce Knob, over 4,800 feet down in West Virginia, is a whole lot more visible. The sky, the black sky is a whole lot blacker than it is locally. And hopefully get down there again one of these days. Another favorite of mine is the 230 million light years away, NGC 1275, the galaxy cluster, also known as the Perseus A radio source, which is that further one here, the quasar or blazar going on in there, sending out radio, known as a radio source. That's the brightest member of that galaxy stream, and it's another one that's really nice to look at on the dark skies. In the scope, it looks closer to this than it does to that, because you don't get to see all those filaments. But of course, it's not that bright in the scope either. This is probably one of my favorite objects to put high power on. It's only 4,600 light years away, the blue snowball. And as you go up in power on this, a lot of that inner shell becomes very, very apparent. And it's not too different from what you see here. It holds up very well to power. And I found my favorite power for this at Blue Mountain Vista was 1137 power in my 3.7 millimeter ethos with the 2-power power mate. So the imaging streams about this long. I had my power core in the focuser, the power mate in the power core, and then the 3.7 millimeter in the end of the power mate. So I had to move my ladder back to actually look through there. But it holds up the power very, very well, especially on the steady skies we had that night. It was just a really gorgeous, gorgeous view. And now for the scariest object in the sky. Ooh.
Skull nebula.
It's NGC 246. You get, it was just in the whale, or the sea monster, as it used to be called. It's only 1,600 light years away, and as Todd called it, it's the Skull Nebula. And I couldn't find an image that really represents the eyepiece view, because many of the astro images I found didn't scare me. But in the scope, it's even dimmer than this. It's very ethereal. It's ghostly. And if you I have a tracking scope. If you turn off the motors and just let it drift through the eyepiece, it's even eerier. And this time of year, it just sends a chill through my spine. It's the Skull Nebula. The best view I had with it was a 351 power for about 6 millimeter ethos. And that's pretty much what you get with an astro photograph. It doesn't do the same for me. So, and now for some words from our resident stargazer, Greg Lee.
Stargazer. That's an official title. I didn't know it came with a hat.
You can come here if you like.
You got the pictures, huh?
Yeah, I'll just click away.
Okay.
Oh, you want to talk from there? I'll just sit over here. You should get on the camera. Yeah, you should get on the camera. We can turn the camera around for him. Sit down, get on the camera.
Keep the mask on.
And there's Greg at Chisholm. Okay, want to talk about your stalk? No?
Well, yeah, I had attached a stick to it, so the controller was up higher. They sell it that where it mounts on the top of the little yellow ring, but you're down kind of bending over too low, so
I'm going to move it up.
Just made it up more at standing level. One of the fun things to do when the sky is cloudy like it has been all summer at nighttime is do some daytime astronomy. So one of the things that Dave always talks about is finding Venus in the daytime. So I was playing around with it the other day, a few days ago. We had a really, really clear day. So I got out the 20 by 80 binoculars. And now that we have things on our phones, you can find out the altitude and azimuth. Thank you. Real easily. So I got an old. It's more gibbous than that right now, that image that you showed. Venus is in a gibbous phase right now, and it's even more football shaped than that one at the moment. But a couple of ways to find it during the daytime is you can look up on any of the apps that you can get, find the altitude and azimuth. The phones themselves also have apps in it. My iPhone has got this, shows you can put it on the top of the scope there, and you turn it and it shows you the angle that you're looking up. It also has an azimuth thing that shows up in the other image there. There's a compass, so it tells you exactly what number to look at, and from looking up on the websites, you find it pretty easily.
Is that your twilight map?
Yes. It's a non-driven mount, and I just sweep back and forth with it when I get close. So this method got pretty close to it. Another thing I was fooling around with was an old-fashioned plastic protractor. I can't talk tonight. Yeah, so I taped it on there and just estimated the altitude, and from there you go the old star hopping method. You just mowing the lawn. You get the target where you think it's going to be, and so you start
sweeping to the right, up a little bit, sweep to the left, up a little bit, sweep to the right. Didn't catch it that time. Start back to the starting spot. Now we're going down. Left, right, and okay, well, we found it. Just by estimating pretty closely the altitude from the protractor.
What does that mount those binoculars on?
The mount is the twilight mount.
This
From,
one's the twilight too?
from, yeah.
No.
Though that one, no, that's a
The camera tripod?
camera tripod. Yep. So fun thing to do in the daytime, a couple of different ways to attack it, and a little success breeds some enthusiasm. So
The other thing that people don't understand, they think Venus is just a white disk. You actually can see cloud structure in Venus, especially.
Yeah.
In the daytime.
and you can see Venus without binoculars in the daytime because your eyes are better than
Yeah,
that.
I see it all the time, but you can see cloud structure in Venus in the daytime. Because when it's way up ahead, when it's way overhead, you got much better seeing. When
Yeah.
you see it in the evening sky, it's down low and it's in the muck.
Yeah.
But up, when it's up high, you can get really good seeing. It's a myth that you don't get good seeing in the daytime. You can get extremely good seeing in the daytime. And when it's at this particular phase, or when it's in dichotomy, when it's just, perfectly half, when it's called, it's a dichotomy, so, it's like, 50%. That's when the clouds will actually show up the best.
Yeah.
And if you get some good seeing, you can see the faint, like it looks like that. You can see the faint structure in the clouds. I've seen it a couple of times.
Well, I first found it earlier in the day on that particular day when it was much higher up with the binoculars. And then I started fooling around with the telescope and the apps in the iPhone. By that time, it was getting lower in the sky by the time I found it with the telescope.
So once you get good at finding
But,
Venus, start looking for stars. There's a lot of stars you can see in the daytime.
Yeah.
A lot of stars you can see in the daytime. They're pretty cool. And it's not,
Besides the sun.
yeah, it's not, and they're not, it's not like there's this little faint little pinprick. They stand out amazingly bright against the blue sky. in the
Oh,
daytime.
yeah. Oh, Venus was obvious. Once you sweep by it with the binoculars, bingo, wow, it's there.
And if you know where to look, so if you let your eyes relax, you can easily see it in the daytime. You can see Venus in the daytime, you can see Jupiter in the daytime. too.
I've seen both of those in the daytime, yeah.
And of course, if you're into looking at Mercury too, Mercury is best to see in the middle of the daytime. You're not going to see any detail when it's down low.
Yeah. So
Cool.
another little fun thing to play around with.
Thank you.
I stopped share.
So that can, I believe, has anybody had anything else they wanted to share? I think that covers it. So again, big thanks to all of our speakers for tonight. And just as a final reminder, we are holding our astronomy workshop on every Tuesday. And then the third Tuesday in October, we have our NASA Ambassador, John Conrad, who's going to be giving a talk.
Yay.
So stay tuned. Look forward to seeing all of you guys very soon. And just as a reminder, there are refreshments in the library. Thank you. That's what it's
They're
called.
only for the people who are here.
That's right. That's right. Oh, all right, everyone, take care.
Great, thanks.